We're going to be talking about social justice as a value. And if you define social justice, it means when you say something is just, you're talking about that the resources in the community are equitably distributed. Now, the important point here being equitable distribution and not equal distribution, something that I will focus on in a while. Opportunities, obligations, power in society as a whole is fairly distributed, and especially in context of, we talk about social justice in context of marginalized communities who have been since time immemorial denied justice. And so social justice as a value teaches community psychologists to understand in what pockets of the community is power accumulated, and how is it that we can redistribute the resources, the power, the decision making skills in hands of all the members of the community equitably and not equally. Now, there has been a disenchantment with psychotherapy, as you know, especially people who move to community psychology. And one of the things that people have criticized psychotherapy for is that it is elitist, which is what I've always found, even in the case of a lot of clinics and counseling setups in India. Unlike medical health, where you have subsidized help available. So, for instance, yeah, government hospitals, the conditions are really bad, but still for 10 rupees, you can see one of the best doctors in India in AIMS hospital. But the counterpart for that, in terms of mental health, is not available, or even if it is available, the need versus the availability of mental health practitioners, the ratio is so skewed that it's nearly impossible for people, low socioeconomic status people, marginalized communities in general, to access mental health facilities. Mental health facilities are costly, they take time and effort. So therefore, the poor man, or an oppressed class, or the marginalized community that has as much right to receive help for their mind, does not get it, and they do not get that kind of help that they deserve. Now, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about mental health and oppressed groups, which is that it's been found that the oppressed groups have special mental health needs. And in fact, I was asked this question a couple of days ago, that the people who live in small towns, the poor people, they're more mentally resilient, and it's the rich upper class, upper middle class population that, because they have so much luxury of time and money in their hands, that they are the ones who become anxious and depressed. And I found that to be extremely revolting, because that is coming from such a position of power, where not only are you denying the problems that the dispossessed people, the oppressed people face, but at the same time you are even justifying it, that justifying the denial of the problem, that it's not needed, they don't have a problem. So there are many researchers that will find that the kind of stressors that the LGBT community faces, it's significantly more compared to rest of the population. Then there are researchers that talk about how caste-based discrimination can lead to social isolation, depression, low self-esteem. I don't think that there are enough researchers today in India, at least, that are examining the link between Islamophobia and psychological distress, or racism experienced by the northeastern communities in our country, and mental health, or even mental health of Kashmiris. So, when you talk about accessibility, availability of mental health, social justice as a value talks about what is it, as community psychologists, that we are doing, and how are we committed to providing mental health support. I'm taking mental health just an example, it could be any other resource, mental health being the resource of mental health services being a resource over here. So how is it that as community psychologists we ensure that the programs that we develop are rooted to this value called social justice. Now, in community psychology, there's something called liberation psychology that came out of that came out of the work done by psychologists in Latin America. Then there's critical psychology as a field, and there is feminist psychology as a field. So these three fields are especially committed to pursuit of social justice. Not only why have the oppressed groups been excluded, but also answering the question, how is it that oppressed groups can be social justice can be made available to, or equitable redistribution of resources can happen, or procedural justice, which we will discuss, can be made available for people, oppressed classes and oppressed groups globally. So the roles of community psychologists, some of the roles of community psychologists, one of them being advocacy work, advocacy for social policy changes, laws, court decision, government practices, regulations, changing public attitudes, especially through mass media, and even for that matter, guidance of clinical work. So as a community clinical psychologist, you are going to be engaging in research work, or even action oriented work, wherein you could be examining the psychological effects of social injustice, oppression, violence and persecution, and even what social action, that what programs can we develop in communities. So for instance, how do I make mental health services available for Kashmiris, a community development project. So now coming to the types of social justice, there are majorly two different types of social justice that we'll talk about: distributive and procedural. So distributive means that an unjust society is where resources could be, education is a resource. So who gets to go to, let's say, a St. Stephen's or an LSR or one of the topmost, Harvard or Oxford, one of the topmost universities of the world? Am I going through merit, or is it a special advantage that I've had through my life, which is my parents were extremely educated, my parents took the right decisions with respect to educating me, sent me to the best of schools, my residence, the area that I lived in, had good schools at walking distance perhaps, that offered all these hi-fi tech classes, and I basically benefited the most out of this education, which came out of my privileged position of being in a society. So if I get through one of the best B schools, best engineering, medical schools, is it because of my merit, or is it because of the privileges that my ancestors, my family members have accumulated over a period of time? So when oppressed groups of people, whether they are women, whether they are SC/ST communities, whether they are LGBT communities, or disabled people for that matter, if you do not find them in position of power, it is not right to say that because they do not have enough merit. The thing is that that over a period of time, resources have been accumulated and acquired by certain communities in the society. Social justice would mean redistribution of these resources. So in class 1, for instance, I had spoken about the Land Reform Act, the land reform policies that were there after independence of the country. So in land reform policies, large surplus land, so there was a capping done that no zamindar, no person, zamindari system of course was abolished, but no landowner can probably acquire more than this amount of land. If there is a surplus land available, then it will be distributed to the landless people. So this is redistribution of a resource, which is land. Okay. Now I was talking about equality and equity. So this is equality कि हमने सबको एक एक डब्बा दे दिया and everyone has to use that and make the most of their life. But this is unfair. This is not justice. There are groups of people in the society who have more needs, who have different needs than the other groups of society. So for instance, this kid needs two boxes to come at the same level as others. This person needs one box and this person doesn't need this box. And this is why many people are not able to understand why we need reservation policies in our country, because reservation policies are engaged towards equitable distribution of resources in general. So if we talk about equitable distribution of seats in colleges, that so that not on the unreserved category is not the one that is, the only one that is getting educated. Good quality and education should be reserved for those people who may be coming from villages, maybe are not speaking as fluent English as you and I are, or maybe who are first generation learners of their families, right? So this is about equity. There is much more to it where social justice is concerned. Simple equity and redistribution is not enough. So next time when someone talks about equality, if this diagram should come to your mind, that this is not equal. We are not looking for equality, we are looking for equitability. Okay, next is procedural justice. Procedural justice means who decides कि किसको कितने डब्बे चाहिए, who decides कि इसको 2 चाहिए, इसको 1 चाहिए और इसको कोई नहीं चाहिए. So this is called procedural justice, the procedure of decision making followed that regarding how the resources in the society are going to be distributed. Now, marginalization, exclusion of groups of people is how injustice is maintained. Okay, so I was reading this very interesting quote by Ambedkar today, because today is Ambedkar Jayanti, that he said that Hindus have a problem, I'm of course paraphrasing this. Hindus have a problem with Muslims and Christians who have spread the word of Islam and Christianity and have, in quotes, converted people. I'm sure you would have seen this around you. Oh, these groups of people convert the people. But Ambedkar says that if they have used cruelty, or if they've used violence, if they've used coercion to spread knowledge, then it is not any different from the upper caste Brahmin Hindus who have restricted the access to education, to Sanskrit, to scriptures, and claiming that no, this is only going to be the right of Brahmins to study and nobody else, especially not lower caste people, they are not going to be allowed. So what is the difference between a group that spreads the message that they want to spread through conquest, through conversions, versus a group that refuses to share knowledge, which is of course power at the end of the day? So marginalization and exclusion of people to access resources is one of the ways through which you maintain the injustice. Women are not there in science, technology, engineering fields. Women are not there in courts. Women are not there in parliament. So you are going to say that okay, we have not stopped them, they are not coming here. If they are not coming here, they don't deserve to be here. If they don't deserve to be here, then there is no injustice in it. That is status quo, that is natural world order. So procedural justice is about who decides the redistribution or distribution of resources, and the answer is that procedural justice involves fair representation of citizens in decision making. It's go back to citizen participation, go back to the concept of who makes the decisions, and how we that we don't merely need to consult people कि हम ये कर सकते हैं. You need to take feedback from all groups of people and then arrive at a society that, or a community that in general feels that yes, this person needs 2 boxes and this person needs 1 boxes, and that would be procedural justice. Now, some time ago, the entire country and even the most educated classes were celebrating extrajudicial killings of rapists, alleged rapists. Let me call it that, not rapists, alleged rapists. And policemen said that, oh, they were running away and we shot them in encounter. This was regarding this lady Priyanka in Hyderabad, who was brutally raped and murdered. So what happened was that this article, for instance, talks about that this is not procedural justice. Procedural justice means no matter how heinous a crime you've done, you deserve to have a voice. You deserve to be represented in the court of law. Your voice will be heard. And that did not happen. Procedural justice does not happen. And that is why we cannot celebrate extrajudicial killings, because as a society, we are moving away from evolution, progress, and growth, and going back to the jungle law where might is right. Now coming towards the some of the case studies. Now, if you Panchayat Raj. Now I'm going to take up this case study. Social justice is a vowed objective of Panchayati Raj, which means that Panchayati Raj system was put into place to make representativeness of to empower women, to increase the citizen participation of women, and of course the lower caste and backward castes and communities. Now, in his research paper, this person found that decentralization processes, where power is decentralized or transferred downwards in the hands of some people, village people who have been chosen, are nothing but rural elite. And this has led to strengthening of local autocracy and patriarchy. So how is it that certain panchayats can go ahead and give very unconstitutional decisions, like unmarried women will not be allowed to access mobile phones, or for that matter, chow mein eating leads to rape and chow mein will not be allowed in our village community, whatever. Or for that matter, you come up with khap panchayats that they think that they are above the constitution, not realizing it is panchayats are of course unconstitutional. But if you have panchayats that are taking decisions that are autocratic, that are patriarchal in nature and going against the spirit of the constitution, then panchayat system has not ensured, even though the goal was social justice, it is acting completely contrary to the goal, that the objective that the system had, and which is the reason why it was put into place. So for genuine participation, the local context must be addressed first for social justice to be achieved. So, in understanding local context of participation of disempowered and decision making processes, which is of course the procedural justice is needed. So, just that, okay, women seats will be reserved, 1/3 seats will be reserved for women, it is becoming an incomplete way of achieving social justice, because I repeat, women are becoming proxy of nothing but the elite, and if nothing else, the power still lies in the hand of the rural elite women, and through them the rural elite men at the end of the day. So are we achieving the objective of social justice here? That is questionable. So this is about social justice. There is just so much more to speak about this, but what you need to understand is that the community development programs, the empowerment programs, the community project, they're all supposed to be sensitive to social justice. Your health promotion programs, when you say understanding the priority population, a major part of understanding the priority population are who are the oppressed groups and classes in this particular community, and how is it that we can address the special needs of the oppressed community and classes, and thereby of course renewing our commitment to the value of social justice as community psychologists. So this is about social justice.